the first question will touch on bond valuation, okay? And I went and I was nice, so I kind of gave you what you should expect per question. So this one is a solve for present value, and it's kind of two components to it. There are missing coupons, and then there's going to be different coupons, okay? So you're going to have to kind of take that in mind as you do the question. So let's read it together. There you go. Fuji TV issues bonds with a $1,000 face value. Okay, so already there, we know that our face value is $1,000. So we could go ahead and categorize this as being F is equal to 1,000. We know that our face value is equal to 1,000. We also know that this has a 20-year maturity. All right, that's awesome. So if we know that there's a 20-year maturity, that means that an N should at least be 20, if not more, depending on how many coupon payments we have in this in a year. So in this example, we see that the bond makes semi-annual coupon payments. All right. So if it's making semi-annual coupon payments, so the frequency is 2, and we know that we have 20 years. Therefore, it seems like if we're solving for the total amount of payments, how many? Thank you, Waleed. You're a G. I love that. Exactly. N would be 40. N would be 40 in this case because we have 20 years with 2 payments per year. So for this bond will be making 40 total payments. Now I'm going to write a few rules at the top. Okay. So remember this. For you to find your N, all that you got to do is do the number of years, okay, multiplied by the frequency. Remember that the frequency is equal to the amount of payments within a year, okay? Really, a simple way to look at this is to really understand that you're going to be making, essentially, 40 payments if you were the bond issuer. Okay, so let's continue on this. So the bond makes semi-annual coupon payments of $60 each until the end of year 10. Okay, so that's pretty awesome. I'm going to highlight this in a different color just because I kind of know where this is headed. All right. Now on an exam, if you see something like this, where they tell you until the end of a specific year and you're doing a bond question, start highlighting in different colors. Okay, because we're going to break down the question to different parts. So this is the first part. They're going to be paying $60 coupon payments. All right. $60 coupon payments for essentially 20 years, for half of our 40. Okay? After that, the bond is going to make semi-annual coupon payments of $90 until maturity. So we know that this portion will be the second part of the question. And we could say that our second coupon payments in this question will be equal to 90. All right? And N, all else being equal, should be 20 for that specific portion. However, this question has another portion to it, and it's telling you that due to cash restraints, okay, the firm will make no coupon payments on the bond in year 1 and year 2. So for you, what the heck does that mean? You know, if you see this on an exam, what should that say to you? Okay, well, this simply says that quite literally, for the first 2 years, okay, the bond will actually make 0 payments. So you will receive 0 coupon payments for the first 2 years. So if I could ask somebody in the chat, how many total payments are we missing? How many total payments are we missing in these first 2 years? If we're missing payments in year 1 and year 2, Waleed, I love it. Thank you so much for participating. Yusra, thank you so much. Shane, thank you so much. So we're missing 4 coupon payments. 4 will be missing, okay? And what is the dollar value of those coupon payments? What is one coupon payment in this case? Like what part are we in? Are we in part 1 or part 2? So like how big are those coupon payments that we're missing? It's a bad example. Thank you so much, everybody. $60. Hell yeah. I can't speak English. So $60 each. Amazing. All right. And really something important to see here is that these coupon payments are going to be paid at maturity. Okay. So these 4 coupon payments that we missed will be paid at the end, okay? At the end, when the bond is over at maturity. At maturity means at n equals 40 or t equals 40, if you will. So they're going to do this at t equals 40, all right? Now, another thing, the last thing that's pretty valuable here is if investors require a 7.5 rate of return, okay? What is this? What do we call this? If they require 7.5%, we call this essentially our yield to maturity, our yield to market, our K, okay, or our KB. But the thing is, in order for us to get our KB, we need to remember that what you're going to do is going to be YTM divided by the frequency. So in this case, what is our KB? What is our K? If it's 7.5% divided by our frequency. Can somebody tell me in the chat? What would be our K? Thank you so much, Marianne. Awesome stuff. So this is our KB. That's really, really, really awesome. And then finally, what we're trying to do in this question is solve for the value today. All right, so that's all that we're trying to do. We want to find P0, okay? So let me just take a step back. On an exam, really the first step to do, and the more questions you do along the way in your prep, the better you'll get at this, but it's always to highlight information prior to actually starting the question. Highlight the information you've got into the question, categorize them if you've already, if you know where to put them into which buckets, if you know your formulas, and then the second step would be to draw our timeline, okay? Our timeline will be super useful, especially at the very beginning, for us to get a sense of what we need to do, okay? One thing that I also like to say is what we did here is we highlighted a bunch of different topics within our question, and then we categorized them. Don't forget that when we do bond valuation problems, there are really only a few variables that we're looking for. In fact, there are only 4 variables that we're looking for our formula. These 4 variables, you actually see them on the screen. It's F, the face value, N, the amount of years, in other words, the amount of payments, KB, our cost of interest, and then C, our coupon payments. I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anything, okay? So F, C, K, and N. Those are the 4 things that you're looking for, nothing more, okay? So now let's quickly make our timeline. It's gonna help us a lot with understanding what we wanna do now, okay? So what we'll do is we'll build our timeline super quick. So I'll just do that quick. So we know that we could make a timeline like this with t equals 0, 2, 3, and 4. The reason why I put the 4 first timeline points is because we know that the first 4 payments will not exist. So I just really want to visualize that for y'all. Then we could skip a few years, all right, to 19, 20, 21, and then we could skip a few years to 38, 39, and 40. The reason why, for anybody here that would like to use timelines, the reason why I'm putting a timeline out is because sometimes if we only use the formula, we tend to forget crucial things that we should not forget within the question. So by using our timeline here, we're really going to be able to break this down into 3 parts and understand what are the inputs in our formula, our single and unique bond valuation formula, okay? So before we kind of jump into the next step, I would like to simply draw out a few things. So we know at T0, T1, T2, T3, and T4, there are no payments. So what you could do here on your timeline, you can just do this. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it to be super clear, okay? And then we know that our $60 each will begin because we know that the first 4 payments are not going to exist, such that at T19, you should be getting $60, and at T20, you should be getting $60, okay? That's the first part. So we could draw it out like this. That's going to be our part 1, okay? So we could call this part 1, okay? Then we could move on to the next color. And we know that in this case, starting essentially T21, every single payment will actually be done. So there are no ambiguities in that end. all right? Such that here, we're going to have 90 all the way, so we're skipping these years there, all the way to T39, all the way to T40, all right? We know that we're going to have our normal payments or every single period, okay? So this is going to be part 2. Right now, we're just visualizing the question. However, can I ask you in the chat, just really quickly, what's happening at maturity? How much money are we going to receive at T40? Like extra, other than the payments. How much extra money are we receiving at T40? Or how much money are we expected to receive other than the coupon payments? That's maybe a better way to look at it. Somebody tell me. So Waleed says 1,090. Okay. Let's Waleed, you're getting there, but let's remove the 90. Let's not think about the payments received in part 2. So just the face value. What are we receiving in terms of face value? We're receiving for sure $1,000, right? Because we're receiving this amount right here. We're for sure getting that. But then are we also getting something else? Yusra said 1,240. But I think she's onto something here, right? We should not forget that we're going to be receiving these 4 missing payments. Okay, we're going to be receiving 4 times $60 that we did not receive over here. These payments are going to be received at the end of the bond's life. In just a second, I'm going to ask you a question to really make sure that everything is okay. So not only are we receiving $1,000, we're also going to receive our 4 missing payments, i.e. we're going to receive an extra 240. So our face value, our stuff that we're going to receive at maturity will be $1,000 and $240, not including obviously our coupon payment at T equals 40. So now let's take a step back. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Do you guys understand what we did for part 1? Quick yes or no in the chat. Do you visualize part 1? Is part 1 clear? Quick yes or no. Just quick. Amazing. I'm happy with that. For part 2, we're only looking at the coupon payments, okay, from T21 to T40. Write no in the chat if you understand. Write no in the chat if you understand what we did for part 2. Write no in the chat if you understand what we did for part 2. Amazing. Super happy. Now, part 3 is what's in red. Okay, so that's part 3. Write yes in the chat if you understand that at maturity, we're going to receive $1,000 plus the 4 missing payments that we didn't get here. Amazing. So once you're able to do this on an exam, you should be so excited because now it's freaking easy. You know, pardon my French. It gets really simple. Okay, so what I'd like you to remember is that when we're doing some bond valuation questions, there's only one formula that we need to use. There's only one. You know, there's not 2, 3, 4, a million. There's quite literally only one formula to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to get a screenshot of the formula, put it on screen, and then I'm going to use that to explain what we want to do for each part. Okay? So let me just get that screenshot of the darn formula real quick. It shouldn't be too long. Just going to open another file, take a screenshot, and then put it here. But it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so give me a sec. If you already know what to do, by the way, by all means, go for it and start. I'm just going to do this step by step, switch all to make sure that you know, it's going okay. So my computer is slow to get the formula. We should have it in just a bit. Write it in 2 seconds. I think I remember it. I've heard them. Perfect. So for you to find the value of a bond, you could simply do C over KB multiplied by 1 minus 1 over KB to the power of n plus F 1 plus. Okay, so this is the formula for our bond valuation. Okay, this is the only formula you're going to need to use. Now, what I'm going to ask you is we're going to do each and single one of these parts one by one, and I'm just going to ask you all to give me, the answer. Okay? So for part one, what I need you to understand is we're going to define every single one of the things we need for this formula, and we're going to plug it in for part one, for part two, and for part three. Okay? That's how we're going to go about it. So if we look simply at part one as being its own individual bond, I think we could all agree that C is going to be equal to 60, that KB is going to be equal to 3.75%, and that our F, if I could ask you in the chat, what is our F for part one? Just for part one, from T1 to T20, what is our F? Do we have an F in that period of time? Do we have an F from T1 to T20? Do we have an F? I need a few people to write it in the chat. Waleed says no. Yusra says 0. You guys are pros. Hell yeah. We have nothing at maturity within part one. Okay, let's stay there together for a second. In part one, we're looking at it as being its own individual bond. Okay, from T1 to T20, we're looking at it as its own individual bond. Okay, and in this case, we're only getting coupon payments of $60 from T1 to T20. There's no payment at maturity. There are no additional payments at T20. And for that reason, our F is 0. Okay, it's going to get more clear as we do part 2 and as we do part 3. All right, you're going to love this. Now, what about our N? Whoops, I'm still on my highlighter. What about our N? What's our N here? Waleed says 20. Is it 20? How many payments are we actually getting, Waleed? How many payments? Diane says 16. One more person, Yusra says 16. Exactly. Okay. So this is very important to understand. Because our N represents the amount of payments we're receiving, therefore, in this case, we only have N equals 16. So what I would like you to understand is that if we were to plug this in within our formula, here we would have 0. So obviously 0 divided by whatever gives us nothing. So we only really need to use this portion of the formula, okay? In which it'll be 60, it'll be 3.75%, and then here would be 16. Could everybody here actually plug this in within your formula and tell me what you get as your PV, okay? What do you get as your PV? I'm gonna let everybody give it a shot. I just really want you to try it out, just so you get that exposure. Shane, you got, I'm assuming a rounding error, like you just wrote it wrong in the chat, but I'm assuming you got the correct answer at 712. One more person, just for fun. By the way, I never did this question. It's a brand new one that I made this morning, or well, I guess when I posted it in the group chat, so on Monday. But that's why I want one more person to give it a shot. What about Yusra or somebody? Just try it out. Let me know what you got. I'm pretty sure 712.20 is the answer. It's not very hard. It's plugging stuff in. Amazing. So we'll go with 712.20. I feel like that's correct. All right. So now everybody but Yusra could answer the following question, because I know Yusra knows the answer, okay? Because we did it together. All right. Let me ask y'all in the chat, everybody else. Where is this present value? Where is it on our timeline? I'll give you a few options. Is it at T0, T2, T4? Which one of these three? Is it at T0, T2, or T4? Where is this value? Where is it onto our timeline? Is it here? Is it here? Or is it here? Where is this present value? Right? Think about it. Shane says 4. Okay, maybe. I mean, it could be 2. I need a few people to give it a shot. Waleed says 0. Okay. PV0. I need Marianne to give it a shot, and I'm gonna call on a few people, I believe. So Marianne, I want you to give it a shot. Shane already put his answer in. Who else? Anybody else? Give it a shot. So what are your thoughts? What is the answer? Vincent, you could give it a shot. Where is this payment on our timeline? I'll give you guys like 10 seconds to think about it. Where is this payment on our timeline? Shane says it's at T4. Waleed says it's at T0. Nobody said it's at T2. It could be the answer. I don't know. One more person, please. Give it a shot. Okay, well, your 10 seconds has passed. But this is important because this payment, this present value, okay, we're going to highlight it onto our timeline, is actually at T4. Okay, it's at T4 for all intents and purposes. Now, I want you to think about it. All right, I want you to think about it. The reason why it's at T4, essentially, it's because our payments, right, only began at T5, right? We missed 4 payments. So we only start our present value or timeline at the first payment that was made. And that first payment was at T5 all the way to T20. So when we get our present value, it's impossible that we get it here. We're going to get it at the period right before, at T equals 4. So we actually have our value at PV equals 4. Now, I think we could all agree that that's not the present value, right? We're 4 years ahead. We need the present value today. So we need to solve for PV equals 0. In order for you to do that, what you need to do is simple. You're just going to put this over 1 plus k, well, kb, to the power of n. In other words, to the power of 4, okay? What I want you to remember, a really easy trick on the exam, if you don't remember what to do with the timeline, is to do the following. The number of payments that were missed will be our n, okay? We missed 4 payments, therefore our our n will be 4, okay? That's another way to look at it. With that said, Waleed, everybody, Yusra, Marianne, could you tell me what's our PV0 in that case? What's our PV0, please? I'm gonna trust y'all. I believe you guys have the answer. Okay, so 614.68 will be the correct answer. Alrighty. So that was for part 1. Okay. Let me just ask you before we move on to part 2. From now on, it only gets easier because we understand what we're doing. But for part 1, are we okay? Is everybody fine with this? Do we have any questions? I really want to make sure that we're doing good. Are we okay with this? Do we understand what we did? We broke this down into essentially 3 steps, right? We identified that yeah, you didn't get the last step. Okay, no problem. So Waleed, let's walk through this together. I'll highlight it. Well, because PV4, right? We found our present value at period 4. However, period 4 is not at T0. Our goal is to find the value at T0 because T0, in other words, is PV0. PV0 stands for today. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the value today. So because our answer was at PV4, well, we need to bring it to PV0. And in order for us to do that, we need to use a simple discounting formula. So far, Waleed, are we good? Do you understand that? Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's as easy as a O. Perfect. I'm happy to see that you understood. I'm happy. Okay. So anybody else, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I'm here to help you. And if you don't want to say it here, not a problem. You could always send me a message on Messenger, and I'll be more than happy to get to you. Okay. So this was the hardest part, quite literally. Now it gets easy, very easy, like funny easy. So we'll do it quick. Now we have part 2. All right. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to identify our C, our KB, our F, and our N. So our C is obviously 90. Our KB is obviously 3.75. And our F, what is our F? Everybody in the chat, what is our F? Do we have a F just for part 2, just for the coupon payments, not part 3, just for part 2? Do we have an F for part 2? Just for part 2, by the way, so not part 3. What's in red is part 3. So this is in red, part 3. Shane, I get it, but like we're just gonna go step by step. But you know, everybody, thank you, 0. Thank you so much. What is our N? What is our N? Thank you, Marianne. Vraiment solide. Parfait. Donc maintenant, right now, sorry, I went into French. Right now, we have all of our variables. What I'll ask you to do is to tell me what's the present value. I need 3 people at least in the chat to tell me what's the present value. And then we're going to do the same old game of where is that value onto our timeline. So solve for PVN. In other words, just plug this into the formula. Okay, je vous fais confiance. Exactly. Perfect. Okay. So we'll do 66. Now, one thing that I'd like to ask y'all, I'll do the same thing as last time. Is this at T21, T20, or at T19? Where is this present value? Remember how many missing payments we have. That's another way to look at it. How many payments have we skipped onto this timeline type of thing? What is our, where are we on our timeline? But just like in general, maybe that was a bad example, Waleed. Where is this present value? Where are we? Think about it. Like realistically, if it started at T21 and we did 20 payments until T40, where are we on our timeline? Yusra says T, amazing. You guys are pros. So I'm going to highlight this for y'all. This present value that we got is at period 20. Because once again, I'll give you context. If you guys remember what we did in chapter 5 in the weeklies, and if you didn't see the recording, what we did is that we're still in, like, technically we're still in time value of money, right? We're still looking at timelines, we're still looking at cash flows. And if a cash flow begins at T21, okay, and it ends at T40, there were 20 payments that were made, sure, but the idea is that your present value is one period before. It's at T20. Now T20 is still not today. It's still not at T0. So in this case, for us to bring it back to today's value, we need to discount it. So what you're gonna need to do, I'm sorry, I'm like, my food's coming back up a little bit. But what you need to do is, as per usual, 1 plus KB to the power of 20 to solve for PV0. So could somebody tell me what is PV0? What is our present value at period 0? Marianne is a gangster. Hell yeah. One more answer, please. One more person to give it a shot. Shane, tremendous. Thank you so much. Obviously, on an exam, you know, you're not going to start rounding your answers already. You do it probably at the end, but in this case, it's okay that we're rounding it up, you know, together. But on an exam, just make sure to keep at least 4 decimal points, by the way. Just, you know, it makes a difference when you have several steps. Just something to recall. Okay, so now we have part 2. Finally, I'll just put the timer back up. I'm definitely going over time, but I want to make sure that you're able to do the most complicated question available to you when it comes to bond valuation. So for me, this is a win-win at least. So part 3. Part 3, this is a funny one. Let's go for it. Let's identify all of our stuff. So what is our coupon payment in part 3? Do we have a coupon payment in part 3? Is there a coupon payment here? Is there a C here? Waleed says 0. What is our coupon payment for part 3? There you go. Pros. Our KB is still 3.75%. Now, what is our F? Thank you, Marianne. Amazing. Now, what is our N? 40. Splendid. So, a little note to the wise here. The reason why we didn't put our N, well, I mean, actually, Shane, it's a better person I want to kind of highlight here. Remember when you said here that our face value was 1,000? The reason why we can't put 1,000 in part 2 is because that $1,000 has to be discounted for 40 periods, right? And N here is definitely not the same as N here. So it's better to just group them into their individual segments to make it easier for us to discount them on like as one and to make no errors in the process, okay? So that's why it's important to kind of put part 2 and part 3 in different segments, okay? Just like that, you don't make a mistake. So I'm super happy that you got it. So now what we need to do to solve for the present value, honestly, all that you gotta do is do this. Because it's just a question of simple discounting, right? Because we're putting it for the actual amount of periods. So you're gonna have this 1 plus KB, the power of N. And I'm gonna ask y'all, what is the present value of our face value? What's the present value of the payment we're gonna receive at maturity? One more person, just for fun. One more person. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're at the last stage, the easiest stage, okay? In order for you to find the present value of the bond, all that you got to do is do part 1 plus part 2 plus part 3. Whoops. Now, for those of you who are in my weeklies, you remember this, right? The value of a bond is the present value of all of its future discounted cash flows. So it's a value of all of its future discounted coupon payments and all of its future single, face value payment. So in this case, all that we need to do is part 1 plus part 2 plus part 3. So this amount plus this amount plus this amount. Somebody tell me, what does that give you? Mayan says 2,247 and 24. Quite possible. That seems, no, that seems a little wrong. Because part 1 is 614. This is 598. This is 248. Oh, I wrote part 3 wrong? 284. My bad. I'm dyslexic. My bad. That's on me. But yes, so here it would be 284, I believe. Wow, dyslexia at its finest. Okay, amazing. But our answer will be slightly different though, Marianne, because 614 plus 598 is at least around, I think, 1312 plus 284. You're looking at about 1596 or 1496, something like that. Okay, perfect. So, Marianne, do you believe that Waleed's answer is correct? It should be it should be it. I was probably off by 100. Use class is 1461. You probably put my wrong number. I think use class correct. You do some quick math. You should be correct. So far, it's 1497. I'll do it too. Yes, 1497.98. Yeah, that is the correct amount. Yeah, cool. So that's a question, That's a heavy duty question. Okay. But the reason why, and a few things to say before we move on to the next. Um, Obviously, we took a lot of time to do this because I really wanted you to have exposure to the most difficult question that you may see on your exam in terms of bond valuation. This one required you to understand that, hey, sometimes you need to break down a prompt into like its sub pieces. And from there, you do it step by step and you add these different parts together to find the value today. Overall, if you're able to do this, you should be able to do most bond questions on your exam. So I feel like this went okay. Before we move on to the next question, how are we feeling? Are we okay? Are we ready? Are we good? Amazing. Cool. Solid stuff.